In Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers is an Earth woman who, through a chance accidental encounter, winds up, being empowered by, a mysterious space artifact from the Kree, and then winds up, joining the Kree and being involved in like this space war between the Kree and the Skrulls and their military force. But, through events that I'm not going to reveal because I don't want to give away spoilers, loses her memory and doesn't remember that she is an Earth woman, and she thinks that she's like a Kree lady. And, things happen in the movie that trigger her memory and put her on Earth and make her remember who she was. And, she finds out that there's more of this Kree-Skrull war than meets the eye. And she eventually becomes the Captain Marvel we know and love today. That was my very abbreviated summary of the Captain Marvel movie, just to set up. And now, what do I think of the movie? I will go into that very quickly, but first I want to mention, there's a lot of controversy surrounding this movie. People who really want it to fail and people who really want it to succeed. A lot of that stems from, a lot of the feminist marketing and a lot of Brie Larson statements. And there's a lot of people on both sides who are thinking that when they see this movie, whether they like it or not like it, because there's people who would really love it and people who would really not like it. If, this feminist agenda, is that really in the movie? Now, I just want to say, after having seen the movie, I don't think that this movie is that political at all. So that whole thing, the whole super female empowerment and Brie Larson's comments, that's all coming from the marketing. The movie itself doesn't really have much of any of that in there. There's some kind of female empowerment, girl power stuff in there. And there's some, comments or scenes that emphasize, what it's like to be a woman dealing with, men, I guess. But it's very scant. And overall, this movie isn't preachy at all. And a lot of you who are fearing that or hoping for that are going to be disappointed or happy because that isn't in there, really. I never was watching Captain Marvel and feeling that I was being preached to about anything political or social or cultural, actually. So, if you're worried about that, that's not in this movie. And if you are really excited for it, that's not in this movie. So depending on which side of that conversation you're on or what kinds of messages you like seeing in your movies, I'm just here to tell you that the message in this movie, it's not really there. If it's there, it's very faint. So faint that I think it would go over a lot of people's heads. So what do I think of the movie itself, quality-wise? I thought that Captain Marvel was a decent, solid movie, but I think this is an example of a situation where you can't believe the hype. Because if you were paying attention to the social media reviews that came after the embargo lifted, and a lot of these reviews on Rotten Tomatoes and stuff, a lot of people are talking about this movie it's just so great, and it's the best movie ever, and it's a thrill ride, and it's not bad, but in my opinion, I would say that Captain Marvel is an average, kind of fun yet forgettable action movie. Which kind of surprised me because I was expecting, I guess at this point I need to have enough experience not to always believe the hype. Because, this movie, while fine, and it had some nice moments, overall I wouldn't say that this was any better than most other Marvel movies or superhero movies in general. I would say that Captain Marvel is about as momentous or exciting as maybe Captain America, the First Avenger, or movies like that. And, maybe even Captain America, the First Avenger might have been better. That said, this is not a bad movie. But overall, I'd say it was almost kind of bland. Not bad bland, but just average bland, I guess. So, it's a decent, okay movie. And, that's that. And I'll talk about one thing that was hyped up a lot that it's an example of don't believe the hype. There were tweets earlier saying that Lashana Lynch, who plays Carol Danvers' best friend, she was awesome, and, she was, some of the best parts in the movie. Lashana Lynch was fine in this movie, but, it was no better than the performance you'd see in any other movie. She was a little bit above being the token black best friend. She's Carol's, the white lady's best buddy, and, she's almost a token black lady, but not that, because they do give her stuff to do in the third act. She's a part of the final third act fight, with the villains and stuff. She actually does have a purpose, but she's barely serving more of a purpose and basically just being, the black best friend and being the mother to Monica Rambeau, who will eventually probably grow up to be the female, the black female Captain Marvel in the comics. Basically, she's basically mostly there to facilitate and prop up other people, either directly or indirectly, but they do give her stuff to do. So, she does have kind of sort of a function. But the tweets made it seem like she was like the MVP of the movie. And, while she's decent, she's not that. One person I think who is an MVP and, I guess help serves kind of a buddy cop role is Sam Jackson as Nick Fury before he becomes like the hard-nosed Nick Fury we've known in the past 10 years of Marvel movies. He does a really good job. I think that he has a lot of presence in this movie, good comedic timing. This movie does have a lot of, the Marvel formula where, there's action beats, but, that's peppered with comedic moments and things like that. Nick Fury and Sam Jackson are part of many of those. And he does a great job. And, Coulson, I forgot Clark Gregg, who plays Coulson, he shows up. His role's pretty small, though. And both him and Sam Jackson, Marvel lately have, they've employed, like, this de-aging digital technology, which we saw a lot of in Ant-Man and the Wasp. We see it here. For the most part, both Clark Gregg and Sam Jackson look really good as de-aged versions of themselves. But there are some scenes where you can kind of tell their faces look kind of wonky. And you can tell, like, yeah, that's the CG. Overall, it's fine, though. I mean, I'm not much of a nitpicky person. But, I would say most of the time the de-aging techniques were spot on. But there were a couple of places where I could tell, like, their faces look kind of strange. And I'm like, yeah, this is de-aging. I really like the setup. My favorite parts of the movie, a lot of the movie takes place on Earth. But my favorite parts were, like, in the beginning of the movie when they were, we were on the Kree homeworld, Hala, and we would see the Kree and the Skrulls. I like cosmic stuff, and so I like the setup and, just peering into the world and the cultures of these other planets, these other civilizations. We don't really get much of that, because this movie has to set up, characters, and a lot of it's on Earth. So we leave a lot of that behind, and I hope that I'm sure in future Captain Marvel movies, we'll see more of these societies, and I like that, because that's one element of this movie I liked. We do see, like, a lot of there are some scenes where, Captain Marvel is really cosmic and powered up, and some scenes, surprisingly, where she's not. And if I say anything more than that, I'll veer into spoiler territories. But, there was some cool, I guess... Well, actually, none of the action scenes in the movie were really that, like, anything to write home about. They were average. Just with a lot of special effects and blast powers. There's no cool... Captain Marvel's not a street fighting kind of character. So there was no cool, like, fighting action scenes like you would see if it was like Black Widow or Batman. So there's a lot of heavily CGI'd, like, energy blast fights. And people shooting at each other with their hands and with guns. So there's that. But overall, it's pretty, average. I will say that, unfortunately, the weakest part of the movie was Brie Larson herself as Captain Marvel. She is as wooden as you saw in the trailers, which I was stunned. Like, I was thinking, like, maybe, her character was having, like, suppressed emotions. And they actually talk about that in the movie. But I thought that there was something chemically or, like, telepathically being done to her. There isn't. She really is. That Brie Larson is just really that wooden in this role. Which makes me think, like, she was miscast or she's not feeling comfortable. The directors couldn't pull it out of her. But, I do think this could be a problem going forward if Captain Marvel is supposed to be the center of the future of the MCU. I don't really know if audiences are going to be too much... I don't know if it's going to be as easy for them to get into a character who's so stiff. And doesn't really seem to have the same kind of charisma as, like the actors who play Thor, Captain America, Iron... And basically, like, all the other characters in the MCU so far. Like, I don't think any of the other hero characters in the MCU, they all have, some kind of life or spice to them. And Carol Danvers is played by Brie Larson, just seems very stiff. Even when she's supposed to be delivering jokes and being, sarcastic, as Carol Danvers, I've heard, is written in the Captain Marvel comics, the recent ones. She delivers them, like someone who isn't used to saying sarcastic things that much. Like, Brie Larson, doesn't really seem... I don't know, her delivery just doesn't really seem that... Like, this is natural for her to play someone with this kind of personality. So, Brie Larson's performance, I think, is a huge weak part of this movie overall. But, all in all, I think Captain Marvel is an okay, average, superhero action movie. It's not, like, the best thing ever that you've seen in, like, a lot of these tweets and a lot of these reviews. I don't really know if these critics were smoking. But, it could be, a lot of people are huge Marvel fans. And if you're an MCU fan, you might be really into Captain Marvel. like more than I am. I think I'm pretty fair. But I know that when I was in that theater, there were people clapping when it was over. Like they were really hyped. But I don't know. I wasn't on the same wavelength as them. But check out. I think Captain Marvel is worth seeing, but I don't think it's anything to write home about. So that's my review of Captain Marvel. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please like it on YouTube and subscribe to the channel because I appreciate your viewership, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.